Welcome to Fight News Now Extra. It's John Pollock, and this is your look at all of the news happening in mixed martial arts today. John Ramdeen, Robin Black, and I will be discussing a bunch of Team Alpha Male members in the news, including exclusive comments from Joseph Benavidez, a champion that is set to return, and a challenge has been issued in the featherweight division, and it has nothing to do with Conor McGregor. It was reported by Ariel Helwani on UFC Tonight that bantamweight champion TJ Dillashaw recently had a splint removed from his elbow following surgery on the same elbow, which he had performed after the fight with Joe Soto in August. Dillashaw is eyeing a return to the cage in February or March of next year, where all signs point to a title fight between Dillashaw and Dominic Cruz, who had a successful return in September, stopping Takeya Mizugaki at UFC 178. Joseph Benavidez returns to action this weekend at the UFC Fight Night card in Austin, Texas, taking on Dustin Ortiz. It's been 7 months since we last saw Benavidez at UFC 172, where he forced Tim Elliott to tap out with his feet from a mounted guillotine with Elliott's arms trapped. I spoke to Benavidez about the lengthy hiatus and what he has done with the extra time.
It's definitely a longer time than I wanted. I'm always ready to fight, and, while we can do it, I know I can't do this forever, so I want to fight as soon as I can. I feel I'm always ready and prepared. And having fought 4 times last year, I really like that, I thought I really improved. And like I said, that's what we train to do, and I'm always training. But for me, I did kind of turn it into just a nice time to improve, and I just feel I really made it into a positive and made some improvements during this time. And I really just made the best of it as far as, continuing to train and improve and live the lifestyle goes. So I made a ton of improvements now before getting in here Saturday night.
Another report on UFC Tonight this week is that Chad Mendes would like to return to fight Ricardo Lamas in his next outing. Mendes is coming off a Fight of the Year candidate with Jose Aldo at UFC 179 last month, while Lamas submitted Dennis Bermudez this past weekend in Mexico. Lamas, however, tells Ariel Helwani that he is staying ready in case Dennis Siver gets hurt before his fight with Conor McGregor, and that is the fight he hopes falls into place January the 18th in Boston. And more news from UFC Tonight. Luke Rockhold has signed a new 8-fight contract with the UFC. After debuting with the organization in May of 2013 with a first-round knockout loss to Vitor Belfort, Rockhold has won his last 3. As the former Strikeforce middleweight champion will head into 2015 as one of the top contenders in the UFC's 185-pound weight class. Here they are, John Ramdeen and Robin Black, as we discuss a number of news items involving various members of Team Alpha Male. Let's start off with TJ Dillashaw, the bantamweight champion of the world. After he had elbow surgery, there's a question mark when he'd be back. He's targeting February or March of next year for that fight with Dominic Cruz. Seems to be that the front end of the year for the UFC is looking very heavy at this point with these cards lining up. You've got Rory McDonald getting that welterweight title fight sometime around March. Now you have TJ Dillashaw. This is always the inverse effect when you're hit with all these injuries, is that they all come back. Cain Velasquez, add him to that list, which they might push to June.
Yeah, I mean, just the idea, though, of this matchup at 135 pounds. We've seen how dominant Dominic Cruz has been in the past. We saw how good he looked when he came back to the Ultimate Fighting Championship, but TJ Dillashaw really on fire right now. The idea of these two guys locking horns, really, I think is...
Robin's going to take a month off and just be a cave.
Yeah, of course.
Breaking that down.
Yeah, it'll just be fight pass of every one of their fights in slow motion forever. It's so good, that fight. It is so good. But you're right, John. They do stack a ton of stuff up. And I made the analogy to when you get paid on the 1st or the 2nd sometimes, you get paid on the 15th or the 16th, and you get paid a 3rd time that month. Same thing this year. You'll see a bunch of great fights at the beginning of the year. If it plays out right, you'll see a bunch of great fights in the middle of the year and a bunch of great fights at the end of the year. This could be a big year for the UFC because of that.
However, you also talked about the injuries. It's like, well, we're hoping that TJ Dillashaw is going to be ready for early in 2015, and we're hoping Cain Velasquez is going to be back in June.
That's interesting because Standard & Poor's, who put out their financial kind of results and everything for the year, they target the UFC's profits are going to be down about 40% this year, and citing injuries being a big part of that. Cain Velasquez not fighting in Mexico, that card in LA that got moved. and they're looking at next year, they're looking for it to be much more optimistic. But in what world do we live in where injuries are just a 2014 thing? It's
especially when the UFC just announced they're going to have 45 shows.
Yeah, like you have guys that, and we really see this with a lot of champions who, what they have in common is they're training for 5-round fights. They're training very hard. I think the idea that this is just a bad year. 2012 is a bad year, and I think 2015 it's going to have its struggles. That's just inevitable.
This is the reality, man. You take two super athletes, you put them together in a cage, and you get them to beat the shit out of each other. People get hurt. You get hurt training for that. You get hurt in that. You get hurt recovering from that. I got submitted in a minute one time, and I was so beat up after that. My hips and my back and stuff, training for stuff, you get injured, hey, how do you get ready to fight a guy like that in a cage like that? You train with a bunch of other guys like that for 8 weeks, 11 times a week.
The last fight you were supposed to have, your 10th fight, the fight didn't happen, and you suffered a shoulder injury.
Yeah, I've just fully recovered from my shoulder separation from the fight I didn't have 9 weeks ago.
Looking ahead to this weekend, certainly a lot of focus on the UFC Fight Night card, but also Metamoris is back this weekend with a very interesting fight on top with Kazushi Sakuraba, currently of New Japan Pro Wrestling fame, and Renzo Gracie, a rematch from Pride. I very much worry about Kazushi Sakuraba at this stage of the game doing anything physical, including professional wrestling. But this is certainly Metamoris drawing upon nostalgia, and with Renzo Gracie at the top of it, trying to allure as many mixed martial arts fans as they can for their events.
One of the great things that Metamoris is doing is they're tapping into the hardcore fan base. They did it with the rematch between Eddie Bravo and Royler Gracie. If you're a jiu-jitsu fan or you're an enthusiast, all eyes were on that matchup, just like all eyes are going to be on this matchup between Renzo and the great Sakuraba. Do we anticipate we're going to see the same thing, that type of matchup? I don't think so. But then again, I don't think a lot of people anticipated we see the match we had with Eddie and Royler, but it turned out to be one of the best grappling matches in recent memory because of the history and because of everything that transpired. Because, you know, for years, everybody's like, oh, Eddie's thing, it's a fad. It doesn't really work. Well, he proved it 100% works against some of the best in the world. I mean, Royler was with tops in jiu-jitsu and no-gi grappling for years.
The thing about Metamoris is there is a whole world of people who grappling is their thing. They don't want to see guys punch each other in the face. That's for savages. They want to see dudes like using the most complex strategies to be able to trick another man, using their body into submitting them. That's a beautiful skill. It's a beautiful martial art. And Metamoris has captured those people and bring them together to see a great show. And how the hell are we going to do this, brother? Like, we're calling fights in Montreal this weekend. We got Swanson, Edgar, Pacquiao. We got this. I mean, I don't know how we're going to.
And I mean, Rory McDonald and JT Torres. Rory McDonald out to prove that he is not just one of the best MMA fighters in the world, that he is one of the best martial artists in the world. And JT Torres, very aggressive grappler, made the move from Team Lloyd Irvin over to Andre Galvao's team at Atos, and obviously training with some of the best guys. But it'd be interesting to see how Rory McDonald does.
Quickly, do you like Chad Mendes, Ricardo Lamas next year?
I like it in terms of the fight, but you know, you want to try to create some interest, and for Chad Mendes to call out Ricardo Lamas doesn't make any sense. Call out Conor McGregor.
I don't care about any of that stuff. I want to see the fight.
A featherweight call out not involving Conor McGregor. I'm a fan. Fight News Now Extra continues. Stay tuned.